Armand Tommy RAVA was a powerful Cosa Nostra captain who, after the killing of Albert Anastasia, was allegedly murdered because he posed a threat to new family boss Carlo Gambino. Some sources suggest that the man who gunned down RAVA was Sammy Gravano's mentor, TODDO AURELLO. Let's check it out. Welcome to OC Shorts, bringing you detailed historical snapshots of the American Mafia and other organised crime. Feel free to subscribe if you like that sort of thing. Today, we're going to take a quick look at the murder of powerful Gambino family captain Armand Tommy RAVA. Armand Rava was born in 1911. Throughout his criminal career, it is believed he was involved in extortion, policy, bootlegging and narcotics. By 1957, Armand Rava was established as one of the most powerful captains in Albert Anastasia's family. It is said that Tommy RAVA was a fierce Albert Anastasia loyalist. Rava was the captain of a crew that consisted of many future Gambino family heavyweights. It included the likes of Neil Dellacroce, Anthony Fat Andy Ruggiano, James Jimmy Brown Failla, Anthony RIzzo, Mike Caiazza, Carmine Charlie Wagons Fatico, and Salvatore TODDO AURELLO. All of these mobsters would go on to become captains in the Gambino crime family, aside from Fat Andy Ruggiano, who despite not being a captain was a very powerful soldier. And Neil Dellacroce, of course, went on to become Carlo Gambino's underboss. Most documentaries state that after the murder of Albert Anastasia in October 1957, Carlo Gambino became the new boss of the crime family. However, things weren't as straightforward as that. Carlo Gambino was initially only made boss on a provisional basis, and there was discontent in the family, which had split into two factions. One supporting Gambino, and another which was led by Anastasia loyalist Tommy RAVA. This faction was plotting to take revenge for the murder of their boss Anastasia and seize control of the family themselves. Interestingly, just a few weeks after the murder of Albert Anastasia, Armand Rava attended the disastrous Appalachian meeting in November 1957. Also present that day was his rival Carlo Gambino. Years later, Buffalo boss Stefano Magaddino was recorded by the FBI discussing the leadership situation in the former Anastasia family. Magaddino: "No, not as far as we are concerned. Let me explain it to you. We appointed Carlo Gambino provisionally." Bill or Paul: "Huh?" Magaddino: "Wait a minute. We appointed him provisionally, and then, later, the Borgata made him. Carlo Gambino was made by the Borgata, not by the Commission." Paul: "But you appointed him provisionally." Magaddino: "Because there was a Pupo Sambato. Therefore, the first thing I did was to push Carlo Gambino, who was already the consigliere of the Borgata. Therefore, there was Toto, Catone, they consented, they talked to me, and that's why Carlo Gambino was appointed. The commission went along readily in order to keep these people from disbanding. There was Joe, what's his name? Carlo's underboss? Bill: Biondo. Magaddino: Joe Biondo. The others were there, and the purpose was to keep them together. Once they were kept together, they had an opportunity to elect the boss they wanted. This was the principle. Carlo Gambino was made because he was consigliere. He was pushed because he was familiar with everything. He knew the situation. That's what happened. Joe Bruno knew the situation, Joe Riccobono knew the situation, and they pushed with their help. You have to remember that Donoreo, when he was alive, was in charge of 10 or 12 Cappuccina. He ordered the killing of his underboss without telling us. I told him, "What is your law? The law of the jungle? Just because you are in charge of 10 or 12 Cappuccina, do you think that they are answerable along with you? You are a Cappuccina like them. You answer for yourself, and so do they. They answer one by one. not for you. I told him that in front of everybody. I said, you claim a violation of the law, but what is that which you are doing? The following FBI file summarises Magaddino's conversation to provide further clarity. Magaddino instructs Bill Loffa, phonetic, and Paul Scia, phonetic, to contact the 5 commission members in New York City and let them know their decision on the appointment or nominee for the representative of the Borgata. Magaddino explains that the commission does not appoint the head of a Borgata. An exception to this rule was explained wherein Magaddino had appointed Carlo Gambino provisionally before the Borgata made him. At that time, the commission went along with this provisional appointment in order to keep the Borgata from disbanding. Magaddino indicated that Joseph Biondo held the Borgata together until Carlo Gambino, then a consigliere, was elected. He also informs Loffa and Scia that even though a man is elected as a boss of a family, he is answerable for his actions to the commission. He cited the example of a boss known as Donoreo, phonetic, who ordered the death of his own underboss and had to answer to the commission for his actions. There are several interesting points that arise from the recorded conversation and the summary. Magaddino refers to Carlo Gambino as the consigliere of the Anastasia family. This is interesting because nearly every documentary and book state that Carlo Gambino was in the position of underboss at the time of Anastasia's murder. Stefano Magaddino was a long-time member of the commission, and he would have known who was in which position in the administration of the other New York families. He clearly refers to Carlo Gambino as the family consigliere and not the family underboss. Another interesting point is that Magaddino states that Gambino was only provisionally appointed boss of the family until he had the support of his own Borgata, something which is rarely discussed. As mentioned, after Anastasia's murder, the family splits into 2 factions. Magaddino references this when he says, "You have to remember that Donoreo, when he was alive, was in charge of 10 or 12 Capodicina." Both the transcript and the conversation summary state that the name Donoreo was recorded phonetically and that they were uncertain if this was the correct name. Some sources suggest that Magaddino was actually saying Tommy RAVA, but his thick accent made it sound like Donoreo. For example, the T sounding like a D, and Rava was also sometimes known as Tommy Ravo. So, as we have covered, Carlo Gambino is placed provisionally as boss of the family, but he still has an opposing faction causing problems and trying to seize power for themselves. If we are to say that Donoreo is in fact Tommy Rava, then from what Magaddino says, Rava was in charge of 10 or 12 Capodicina, demonstrating the strength of the group opposing Gambino. In his faction, Armand Rava also had the support of popular Anastasia captain Johnny Roberts Robilotto, who was seen as Rava's second in command in the faction. And there was also Aniello Dellacroce, who was at the time a powerful soldier in Rava's crew and a close friend. Johnny Roberts Robilotto had previously, in his early career, been an associate of the Genovese crime family, and he had been close with the likes of Anthony Tony Bender Strollo, the captain of the Greenwich Village crew. He was also close with Genovese soldier Joe Valachi. Johnny Roberts is also believed to have been the shooter in the hit on Willie Moretti in 1951. Some sources state that Johnny Roberts' brother was a police officer, which meant that Robilotto was ineligible for induction into a crime family. However, Johnny Roberts was a big earner, and Albert Anastasia took a liking to him, and then inducted Robilotto into his own crime family, regardless of Johnny Roberts' brother being in law enforcement. Genovese soldier Joe Valachi, who would famously turn informer, would later recall that after the Anastasia murder, he went to visit his friend Johnny Roberts to warn him about opposing Gambino's ascension. Valachi's testimony on the situation went as follows. Mr. Valachi, I talked to him naturally, slowly and curvedly because I know now that he was very close with Albert, and if he had anything in mind, I said, making a comeback, something like that, Johnny? Mr. Alderman, when you say comeback, you mean he might want to get revenge for the killing of Anastasia? Mr. Valachi, he said, no, don't worry about it. Tony and Vito already spoke to me. I said, good. That is the way it remained. Then I talked about my own affairs, which didn't amount to anything. Mr. Alderman, Roberts was close to Anastasia? Mr. Valachi, yes. Mr. Alderman, you thought he might want to avenge Anastasia's death? Mr. Valachi, yes. Mr. Alderman, let me ask you this. When you had your conversation with him at this club over in Grand Avenue in Brooklyn, he told you that he had already been cautioned? Mr. Valachi, Tony and Vito. Mr. Alderman, not to be foolish and not to try to take any revenge? Mr. Valachi, that is right. Mr. Alderman, did he agree at that time that he would not take any steps to avenge him? Mr. Valachi, he assured them. It is believed that after his conversation with Tony Bender and Vito Genovese, Johnny Roberts decided to switch sides and support Carlo Gambino. However, this action displeased Tommy RAVA and Neil Dellacroce, and on the 7th of September 1958, Johnny Roberts Robilotto was murdered in Brooklyn, allegedly on Tommy RAVA's order. It was reported, John the Mortician Robilotto, the Greenwich Village racket's undertaker, long suspected by the cops of personally making business for his trade, was made ready for a casket himself in East Flatbush, Brooklyn, early yesterday. His head riddled by 4 .38 caliber slugs, the body of the dapper funeral man was the number one suspect in the gang slaying of Willie Moretti, was found sprawled face up in the gutter on Utica Avenue, 100 feet south of a Kings Highway service road. The theory that Rava and Dellacroce had Johnny Roberts killed is backed up by another informer, believed to have been Gambino mobster Carmine Lombardozzi. The FBI file on this shows, in regard to the death of Johnny Roberts, a former capo di Cina in the Anastasia family of Cosa Nostra, informant related that it is his opinion he was killed by Tommy RAVA and Neil Dellacroce. Roberts was killed as he was leaning towards Carlo Gambino in Gambino's efforts to take over the Anastasia family, and inasmuch RAVA and Dellacroce were opposed to Gambino, they killed Roberts. Informant advised the death of Roberts is still a discussion in other families. In addition, Stefano Magaddino had stated that Donareo, who we believe to have been Tommy RAVA, had ordered the killing of his underboss. This could well be a reference to Johnny Roberts, who was RAVA's number 2 man in his faction. Carlo Gambino's position at the head of the crime family was getting stronger, and he also had the backing of 2 powerful bosses, Vito Genovese and Tommy Lucchese. And it appears that Tommy RAVA went down to Miami either on the run or to regroup. However, Gambino's men caught up with him down there, and there are 2 different but similar versions of RAVA's murder. The first version involves Sammy the Bull Gravano's mentor, Salvatore Toddo Aurello, who had been a soldier in Tommy RAVA's crew. An informer reported the murder later to the FBI. The file reads, Avarello and several other individuals stopped RAVA's automobile on a highway in Florida. RAVA at the time was accompanied by an individual whose name informant could not recall, but whom he described as being a tall, slender male. Informant recalled that little Toddo was a soldier under RAVA, but that there had been bad blood between them over a long time. Informant stated that when RAVA and his companion got out of the car, he was approached by Toddo and his followers with guns in their hands. Toddo told RAVA that he had the contract to kill him. RAVA reportedly said to Toddo, "Do you know what you're doing? You're not qualified to kill a man of my stature." Whereupon Toddo and his associates shot RAVA's associate and emptied their guns into RAVA's chest. However, RAVA did not fall. RAVA, according to the informant, stood there facing his assassins with blood spouting out of his chest and looked contemptuously at little Toddo and his associates. This display of masculinity on the part of RAVA infuriated Toddo, who, with the others, repeatedly beat RAVA on the head with their guns until he finally fell dead. Both RAVA and his associate were reportedly buried. Informant noted that Dellacroce had been able to get himself reinstated with the Gambino contingent who had taken over the Anastasia family. The last line is interesting as it states that Neil Dellacroce had sided with the Gambino faction. This was potentially either before Rava's murder, therefore indicating that Neil Dellacroce had betrayed his friend, or that after Rava was murdered, Dellacroce made peace with the Gambino faction. Another version of Tommy Rava's murder was told to the FBI by Gambino soldier turned informant Alfredo Sant'Antonio. Sant'Antonio was a soldier in Charles Dongara's crew. He informed the FBI that Rava had been murdered by Joseph Indelicato and Thomas Altamura at a funeral parlour in Florida. They put Rava's corpse in a body bag, stuck him numerous times with an ice pick, and then dumped his body in the ocean. Either way, Armand Tommy Rava was no more. Neil Dellacroce was rewarded for switching sides by being appointed captain over part of Tommy Rava's former crew. The other half of Rava's crew would report to Anthony RIzzo, who was also made a captain. And Carlo Gambino had secured his position as boss of the crime family that still bears his name. One final interesting point on the murder of Tommy Rava is with regards to the year that it occurred. Many books state that Tommy Rava was killed in either late 1957 or early 1958, just a few weeks after he had attended the American Mafia summit with Carlo Gambino. However, if we look at the information provided by the informer believed to have been Carmine Lombardozzi, then we see that Tommy Rava was responsible for having Johnny Roberts killed in September 1958. This therefore indicates that Armand Tommy Rava was alive till at least the latter stages of 1958. I hope you found that interesting. Thanks for watching.